Okay, so it's the beginning of the action cycle for turn 3. This is action phase 1. The die roll you see there was 6-4, so a dice differential of 2, and momentum is to the Union. So I think as the Union player, I'm going to play pretty aggressively here in the Mississippi. I'm going to activate Buell, and he's going to take an SP with him for 1-2 because he's crossing the Mississippi, 3 to join the Army of the Tennessee. Now I'm going to put him in command of the Army of the Tennessee, along with his 1 SP, giving us a total of 9 SPs. And I'm going to go ahead and play an any card that can add what's called a forced march. In other words, I can squeeze 2 more movement points out of him. So 1, and then I'm going to move into attacking the Army of the Tennessee. So the Union Army of the Tennessee has 9 SPs. They're going to have a total modifier of +2. They get to use both commanders' ratings here. Both Halleck and Buell will add 1. So they're going to get a total modifier of a +2. Meanwhile, the Army of the Tennessee right now only has 4 SPs because those other 5 weren't able to get to the stack because those all moved by rail, so they couldn't move off the rail line. And because the Union has momentum, they can catch the Confederate Army of the Tennessee sort of at half strength, if you will, or divided, their main body of their forces divided into 2 pieces. So the Confederate Army of the Tennessee, it's not an ideal battle. They have a +2/+3. They have a +3 defensive modifier because they are entrenched. They have a fortification that never really got off the ground, so they need to think about whether or not they want to defend on 4+3. They're guaranteed to do at least 1 SP worth of damage. They might do 2. However, the Union is also guaranteed to do 1 SP of damage, and it's more likely that they'll be able to make or beat the tiebreaker. So it's a little bit safer in terms of holding on to SPs for the Confederates to retreat here, or to attempt to retreat. But if they don't successfully retreat, they're going to have to defend without the benefit of +2 of their die roll modifier. They only get a +1. So even though it seems like you really might want to back up, I think it would be a real tragedy, or could be a real disaster, if we tried to run away and didn't quite make it. So I think the South is probably going to engage here, even though they're pretty heavily outnumbered. Not to mention the Southern forces want to hold on to those naval batteries to try to restrict Union shipping down the Mississippi south of, say, Columbus, Kentucky. The Union will roll 2 die, the Confederates only get to roll 1. And it's 7-1 with modifiers. That's 9-4. Let's see how that works out. Well, a 9 on the 9 column gives a loss of 2, just barely, and a 4 on the 4 column gives a loss of 1. So unfortunately the South rolled particularly poorly, and the North rolled pretty well. Now ordinarily the defender has to retreat 2 hexes, but because there's a hex here with more SPs than the retreating force, they can actually stop inside, I believe it's Union City. Yes, Union City, Tennessee. So we'll move these 5 SPs onto the Army of the Tennessee. So now the Army of the Tennessee has 7 instead of the measly 2 they had after losing this battle. The Union Army advances. These naval batteries are destroyed. This fortification is destroyed. These fortifications under construction are destroyed. So there is the Union facing off. So now other options that the Union has. They're evenly matched here in southwest Missouri. They don't have a preponderance of troops. They don't have a Trans-Mississippi card, so it's maybe not so useful. An interesting observation that occurs to me in the Allegheny is that Burnside's stack could run down to attack Bragg. Bragg only has 2 SPs. Burnside has a lot more. I think he might have 6. He has 5. So that's 5 versus 2. It's a very clear advantage to the Union. The problem is that even if he were to win, he could find himself out of supply if Longstreet's troops advance here to Covington and take away that supply depot. And then Burnside might find that his force starts to wither and fall apart. He might be able to do a lot of damage while he's back behind enemy lines, so to speak. But all of those 1 BP hexes could be reclaimed without having suffered any significant damage. Those BPs can't be destroyed. 1 BP hexes can't be degraded. When they're recaptured, they're restored to 1 BP minimum, so it wouldn't necessarily be to an advantage. And if he were to slip around into Lynchburg, try to go for Richmond, or try to go up to Beauregard, it's very unlikely that he'd be successful, because remember, you have Polk's force down there, in North Carolina, and you have whatever would be left of Bragg and Longstreet to still put together a defense and chase him down, beat him to Richmond, and they have the capacity to inflict a significant amount of damage on a Union force that's out of supply in the heart of Virginia. So I think what makes more sense is for the Union to attack Johnston. Johnston is here in his fortifications, so he'll have a +3 on a stack of 3 SPs, but the Union is going to have a +1 on 6, and they're going to use an East card to make it a +3 on 6. So clear advantage Union. So let's roll those die. Okay, so a 5 on the Union modified to an 8, and a 2 on the Confederates modified to a 4. So an 8 on 6 to a 4 on 3. So the Union's good luck continues. You can see here that an 8 on 6 is a 2, whereas a 4 on 3 is a 1. So again, the South loses. Again, they lose 2 SPs to the Union's 1. So J. Johnston retreats only 1 hex to that 1 SP that was already there with his remaining SP in Strasburg. Again, usually you have to retreat 2, but he can retreat 1 here because there was already, or because there's a resource hex there. So Johnston retreats 1. Pope and his 5 remaining SPs continue, and the fortifications that Pope was hiding behind, the entrenchment, I should say, that Pope dug, is destroyed. Now, because Pope's force at the beginning of that battle was 6 SPs, and Johnston's was 3, and Johnston lost, Pope can continue moving. You can continue advancing even after a battle as long as you outnumbered your enemy by more than, by at least a factor of 2 to 1. What that means here is that Pope only actually spent 1 movement point to advance, so he's going to advance again. He's going to press the attack and continue to pursue Johnston, who now only has 2 SPs that are unentrenched. So now Johnston will be rolling with a +2 die modifier on the 2 column, as opposed to Pope's +1 on the 5 column. So for Pope, that's a 6 on the 5 column, and for Johnston, that's an 8 on the 2 column. You can see that a 6 on the 5 column is 1 star, while an 8 on the 2 column is also a 1 star. So finally, Johnston is able to hold him off, and both sides take 1 SP loss. Both sides would be demoralized if they were out of supply, but I don't think either of them are out of supply at the moment. So both Johnston and Pope have a line of communication, but unfortunately they are both out of complete supply. They're out of full supply, so both receive a demoralized marker.